Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I'm finally off of painkillers, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I have in sample form, but I actually had in fairly abundant sample form, because it was provided by the wonderful, mysterious benefactor. It's Diamine Pumpkin, and actually I got 2 full vials of this, so I guess that's about 10 milliliters of ink. And actually been quite enjoying it. And all the tests were done in these 2 pens, and they're actually the same pen. It's a Knox Avicenna, and one with a fine nib, in fact it's quite fine, and another one with a broad nib. Oop, yeah, sorry, it's got Diamine Marine in it. Thought I'd compare it to a few other inks. So here's Pumpkin. Here. And I kind of wanted to show this. So Diamine's actually got a few oranges. So here's Diamine Orange, which is sort of a lighter color. And then Diamine Sunset, which is a very dark orange. Almost reminds me of Noodler's Cayenne. So it's a nice medium, but it's so vibrant. Like I can hardly, yeah, vibrant, bright, sort of the word that comes to mind. But then I've also got Noodler's Summer Tanager. Did I spell that right? Anyways, and Ackerman's number 16 Orange Bovin. I just massacred that. For everyone who speaks Dutch, I apologize. Yeah, so there we go. Check out the chromatography. The chromatography was actually kind of fascinating to watch because, as you can see, there's no orange in it. You can see where the initial drop was put, and then you get this cotton candy pink, or, yeah. And even here, this almost looks like Noodler's Napalm, and then this extremely bright yellow. And I let it dry, but there was essentially no change whatsoever. Crazy stuff. Alright, top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. I'll try and hold this still so you can get a look. Yeah, it's extremely vibrant. It's a very, very bold orange. I have a bottle of Noodler's Habanero, and I absolutely love that ink, but admittedly, you might be able to tell, there's the ink's down to about here, and the other bottle, because I got 2 little sample vials, is about halfway. So, yeah. But yeah, one of the interesting things about these tests was that on a lot of the premium paper, it didn't matter if it was this very, quite fine nib or this broad nib. The dry times were surprisingly similar. So here the fine took 12 seconds to dry, the broad took 15. As you can see, there is some shading, but it's not, it's not in your face intense. I actually really enjoyed the color, as I said. I'd say that the flow was 5.5 out of 10. It really just went. You didn't have to fight it. There was no bleed, no feather, no spread, no sheen. I said there might be some echo with the broad nib, but I honestly don't know. Yeah. Like most Diamine inks, it's not the most water resistant, but actually I was kind of surprised by how much remained, and I was also kind of amused by how much yellow remained. Next is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where the dry times were the same. They hadn't changed, and once again they were actually quite close. And here, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the shading came out just a little bit more on the Rhodia. So if you like that, it's something to consider. And yeah, again, flow was just fine. And I said here that what I really like about this ink is, sometimes you get an orange that just sort of looks like a weak red. This is definitely not that. It looks like a cartoon pumpkin. It's lovely. Yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread. Echo, I mean, that's always to taste. This would not bother me at all, and I consider myself to be quite picky, so... But yeah, again, not a ton of water resistance. You can see where the initial writing was, and you can also see all the yellow that washed away, so that was kind of fun. Next up is Tomoe River Paper, where the dry times were drawn out. Yeah, the fine took 18 seconds to dry, and the broad took 25. But Tomoe River is known for really drawing out dry times, and because it sort of takes so long to dry, it sort of allows the ink to pool in a way where you don't get a lot of shading, but you definitely get a lot of vibrancy. I say here there's no sheen, but it does dry kind of shiny. I don't know if I'll be able to get that to show up on camera, but yeah, just sort of, instead of like a matte color, it turns out really shiny. And I said that, here I was just sort of expressing a theory that the surface tension of the ink must be very low, because it just goes. It goes so easily. And that's probably good for nibs that might have a slight case of baby's bottom, because that sort of droplet of ink at the end of the nib when you're writing, when the tines have to spread, since a low surface tension means that it'll sort of break apart from the rest of the ink more readily. So yeah, anyways, I'm not describing that very well, but that was just a theory. Yeah, Tomoe River loves to let ink slide away when you add more water, and that's definitely what happened here. Probably making everyone motion sick, but I'm trying to get the camera to focus on what I want. But you can still read that. I mean, even on here you can kind of see that hint of yellow that washed away, but yeah. I mean, if you absolutely had to recover something, I think you probably could. Now for the next 3 tests, I only used the fine nib. That would be fair. And I usually refer to this as the world's worst copier paper. However, the performance was so good on here that I was actually legitimately baffled. It took 5 seconds to dry. You still have a wonderful vibrant color. You really don't get any feathering. I mean, maybe you could call it a bit of woolliness, but it's only in the darkest parts. I mean, there's no feathering. I can't explain that. There's really not a lot of spread. You look at the fine writing. I mean, there is some, but it's not as much as we usually see. And there is not a single spot of bleed on the back of this. And I'd say this is a European fine. No. I'd say it's actually a bit on the pretty darn fine side, but anyways. Yeah, I don't know. Something weird happened. But yeah, strangely good behavior. But the water test also, it made a bit of a mess. You can see that yellow, most definitely, but, absorbent ink tends to absorbent paper tends to suck ink in and make it harder to wash it all out. But that's actually much darker than I was anticipating. It's much clearer. It didn't explode and feather like I thought. I don't know. So, but here's what's weird. So here's Mead Notebook Paper. Usually, this paper is just god-awful, and this is just a little bit better. But since this one actually performed really well, it makes this one look bad. But the fact is, if this ink performed the way I thought on this, I think this still would have been better, because it's really not bad. You still have some of that vibrancy. It took 2.5 seconds to dry. You don't get a ton of spread. You get a little. You get a little bit of feathering. Really not much, like you see in shading. But yeah, I mean, this paper is very, very thin. It's thinner than copier paper. So mostly what you're seeing is extreme echo, because it doesn't quite reach the other side. It's like it's made it halfway into the paper, and since it's so thin, you can kind of see it. This would bother me, but I mean, I've never written, I mean, even when I used pencil, I never wrote on both sides of Mead, but anyways. The water test was almost beautiful, in a not encouraging kind of way, but whatever. You can definitely see the writing at the center, and you can very distinctly see that separation of color. You can see how it's sort of that pink in the middle, like we saw in the chromatography test, and the vibrant yellow. I think if you had to recover that, you could. It would just look like you were staring into a bonfire or something. Now, lastly is Moleskine notebook paper, where I hope this will come through on camera, but it's like it sucked the life out of this ink. It's become so dulled. Yeah, see here, it's lost 94.3% of its vibrancy. It's gone very flat. For some reason, it took 8 seconds to dry, even though this was a fairly fine nib. You kind of get shading, but you also get, like, look at the M in amazing. You see that? And it's all throughout. You have these giant, giant feathers, and they're distracting. And even though this is a fine nib, you actually get full bleed in a few spots, and it's really not great. And this paper in particular hates water, so when you add ink and water, you get this crazy fiery explosion thing. So, there you go for your consideration from the Triple N Network. Diamine Pumpkin. It's an extremely vibrant orange that I found myself really enjoying. In a few cases, it actually outperformed what I was expecting, so yeah. For your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.